I'm Dave, founder of Halloween Year Round. I'm very excited to bring you guys an exclusive interview I did with screenwriter James Roberts, who wrote the recent Screambox original movie Here for Blood. A movie that I really enjoyed. I hope you guys have checked it out. I'll put a link of my written review in the description. It's basically what if you took your typical home invasion slasher movie, but threw like an 80s action star wrestler in to fight the would-be killers. It's a lot of fun. It's intentionally campy, but that's kind of the point. There's lots of gore, lots of blood, lots of fun kills, and just a dash of like Evil Dead Cabin in the Woods thrown in there for good measure. So check out this interview I did. Real quick before we get started though, did you know Halloween Year Round has a Patreon? I'll put a link to that in the description as well. It's a great way to support the channel. Members can get a free exclusive commentary of any movie they want each month with me and my wife Jess, where you can just listen to us argue and bicker about a movie, and who doesn't like that? So without further ado, here is my interview with James Roberts. Hi everybody, I'm here with James Roberts, screenwriter of the newest Screenbox original movie, Here for Blood. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
First and foremost, awesome title. It just kind of like jumps right in there, grabs you. This is a movie that I would call it almost like it's sort of a slasher. It's a home invasion movie, but it kind of has that like action. It's like an action slasher almost.
Yeah, definitely. And we throw some, supernatural elements in there as well too, to kind of have some fun with the practical effects. So yeah, it's kind of like an action slasher splatter film.
And that's kind of what I love about it is you have so many home invasion slasher movies where, your final girl, your victim is someone who is very vulnerable, very scared, always running. Here, I mean, he's a badass.
Yeah, that was kind of the idea is there's been a ton of these, home invasion movies where there's a vulnerable person, whether they're isolated or with somebody else who's vulnerable. And I wanted to kind of have that twist of it's somebody who can really not only fight back, but like kick ass. So that's what was fun for me when writing it was the intruders have no idea who's there and what's awaiting them when they arrive.
So I have to ask, just, given the character Tom's background, you guys cast Sean Roberts, who, for me and a lot of other horror fans, he's Albert Wesker in the Resident Evil movies. That's like the first place my mind goes. It was weird seeing his eyes because I'm so used to him wearing the sunglasses.
Yeah, he's got some beautiful eyes, that Sean.
He does. So tell me, was this written with him in mind, or like did he come into the project later?
So yeah, he came on later. That was one of the tougher aspects when we were discussing casting. We're like, it's got to be somebody who looks the part, but who can also have that sense of humor and that vulnerability. And then when they're, fighting, you believe it. So it was kind of like a bit of a tough role to fill in many ways. And our friends at the Butcher Shop Effects Studio, who did all of our practical effects in the film, were kind enough to suggest Sean, and we just reached out to him through his agent and sent them the script, and he signed on with the film.
That's awesome. He was an excellent protagonist. I know you kind of talked about you wanted to see like a badass in this situation. I have to ask, were you already a fan of wrestling?
Yes, I've been a lifelong fan of wrestling. I spent some time myself on the independent circuit wrestling, so I have lived that life. There's a part in the film where Sean's character Tom gets paid $20 for his trouble, and that was a good night if you got $20. There's a lot of times you could drive hours all night, and it was hey, at least you got some experience type deals. So I'm very familiar with that world, and sort of the toll it takes on the performers, the athletes, their bodies, and what they go through. So yeah, I was very well versed in that world he was living in, and then being that lifelong fan and somebody who has experienced that world firsthand.
Wow, I didn't realize. So was it almost autobiographical at times?
You know what? No, not so
You,
much.
you've never dealt with like demonic home invaders, have you?
No, no, fortunately not. I did babysit some kids when I was in high school, the neighbors' kids, but nobody tried to break in and sacrifice us.
Was your goal to make like an action slasher first, comedy second, or kind of comedy first, action slasher second?
It was all in there. I don't think, I think the humor is really, it's very overt. We weren't being very subtle with some of the gags and the humor. Um, but we also wanted you to root for him when he's fighting and when things are happening. You know what I mean? There's a lot of, especially these days, a lot of wrestling does have a lot of humor in it, and that kind of the showmanship of it all. And I think both were equally important. And so we did want to have that kind of playful spirit of it all, and then some fun action scenes with lots and lots of blood.
That there was, I love that you mentioned the practical effects earlier. I think we're at the point now that horror fans, they're kind of tired of bad CGI. I think
Yeah,
audiences in general are are tired of bad CGI, especially for movies that cost like $300 million.
yeah. Yeah, there's nothing worse than when there's like, you're watching like a big studio movie and there's like a cool creature reveal, and then it's like something CGI floating in a hallway and you're like, oh man, like that instantly will pull me out. I'd rather, a classic, monster covered in a rubber suit over, because at least somebody cared and built it with their hands and lit it and tried to evoke some sort of feeling instead of just like, oh, we'll do that after. You know what I mean? We'll make it digital. I really think that it's an important um, an important part of horror history, the practical effects, and also sort of a dying craft that I do see a lot of that resurgence in horror films, and I hope that it continues to grow and spread, and we can keep having those monster makers and effects artists and dreamers that I grew up as a kid absolutely loving and admiring. Your Rick Bakers, your Rob Bottin's, your Tom Savini's, etc.
Well, it's just stuff like that. It ages so much better. You go back and watch like The Thing. All those, it's really there. It's on camera. It's on there is no uncanny valley. There, you don't have to trick your brain because it's actually there. I knew that
Mm-hmm.
creepy looking skull that was trying to eat Tom's head was really there, which I have to ask, was that a puppet? That wasn't a real skull like they used in Poltergeist, was it?
No, it was a puppet. And it was funny because we were talking about, during pre-production, we're like, there's two camps. There's people that see a puppet of a severed head trying to eat people, and they're gonna say, hell yeah. And then there's gonna be people that see a puppet of a severed head trying to eat people, and they go, nah, that's not for me. So there's people that love that kind of stuff, and there's people that'll hate that kind of stuff. We made it for the people that love that kind of stuff, that love, like the Kyoto brothers would do with their puppetry and stuff like that. So we really wanted to have that and have some fun with it. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be kind of fun and over the top in that respect.
It very much is. I think if I may compare to, wrestling itself is a sport that is filled with kind of over the top showmanship.
Mhm.
Just, being a horror fan, going to these conventions, there's definitely a fan overlap between horror and wrestling. There's, they bring wrestlers to these horror conventions that may not have anything to do with horror movies, but a lot of the fans there love those wrestlers. Why do you think that is that there's such an overlap between the two fandoms?
Again, it's that you know it's escapism. You know what I mean? You go to a wrestling show, um, you're always going to have the one person that goes, oh, that was fake. I saw, of course, they're not really trying to end each other's lives. You know what I mean? If you took like a tombstone pile driver from The Undertaker, you'd be dead. You know what I mean? Of course they're not. So it's fun. It's a little over the top. There's escapism. And it's the same thing with horror movies. You go in there, you're not gonna, somebody's gonna, the tropes of the horror. You run up the stairs, you should run up the door, or, the phone dies at the wrong time. Like none of that's, probably gonna happen in real life. But we know, as genre fans, that we can have that fun and get into it and really kind of celebrate the things. Even when I was a kid, horror wasn't as popular. Wrestling was huge because I grew up right in the Attitude Era. So but now it's sort of a niche thing, and horror is on a bit of an upswing. But there's always these people that connect with these worlds, your wrestling, your horror, that some people find weird. Or I've had a lot of people comment when this movie's coming out, they're going, oh, you're right, it's horror movies. Oh, I don't like horror movies. And for me, that's like all I want to watch is horror movies. So it's like everybody, it's just that there's such a strong community for both wrestling and horror, and yeah, that overlap is just a really great diehard fan base that I'm proud to be a part of.
No, there's definitely it's sort of a sanctuary for the outcasts, for people who felt like they never fit in. It's like, weirdos are welcome here. And, I'm a proud weirdo myself. And I was never really a wrestling fan. But I always loved horror, and you always did see, wrestlers kind of making their way over into not just horror, but like acting in general. I mean, look at John Cena, look at the Rock, and all the stuff that they've done. But tell me a little bit about just the process of like where you get this idea for this movie to the point that it's actually being made. Like how long a process was that? Were you involved? And I know I'm a writer myself. I know that there's kind of in some instances the writer's welcome on set. In other cases, they're like, okay, thanks for the script, bye. What was that process like?
So I wrote the script, I think in 2016, for a producer that was asking about, can you whip something together like a low budget horror, and I came up with a script that an early version of this, which was very, very different. There was no wrestler, there was no supernatural element, and nothing really ever happened with it. But I liked the concept enough to keep working on it, and I kind of injected the movie that I'd want to see and things I enjoy, such as the pro wrestler as the babysitter and the supernatural over the top elements. And in 2020, I think it was really early on in the pandemic. The idea was put forth like, hey, let's try to make a movie. We really started from ground zero. We had no, we're a couple hours outside of Toronto, Ontario, in Canada, and we don't really have a great film industry in this town. I mean, we kind of started just cobbling together, all the materials and the crew. We did the old school Sam Raimi style, where we, basically did door-to-door sales pitches to certain people, business owners, etc. And we gathered the funds. And I was very actively involved in that process. And I was a producer on the film, so I was there every night on that set, whether it was cleaning up blood or solving problems or driving people to set or whatever capacity I was needed, I was there. So yeah, I was very, very heavily involved, really heavily involved in the post-production aspect too, picking the soundtrack and discussing all those options. And my dear friend Thomas Vickers was the editor on the film, so he and I sat in there quite a bit together, because he knows my sense of humor and stuff. So we really went through the footage and the film, and we're talking about what fun little things we can add. We wanted to keep as much blood as possible in the thing, of course. So yeah, I've been fairly, hands-on the entire process from inception now up to the release of the film.
And I think you can definitely tell that this is a movie that, any, low budget indie movie like this, there is a passion, behind it. Because if there wasn't, it wouldn't have been made. It wasn't like some studio, threw money at it and it was a, made by committee sort of thing.
Mhm.
And I think that passion really, really shows. I also love I love Tom as a protagonist because he's just he's very chill. Like there's supernatural stuff. There's like demons being, summoned from hell itself. And he's just like, whatever. We're gonna deal with it. Like he is the most level-headed guy under pressure. So I have to ask, is that how you are under pressure? Or was Tom like how you wish you could be?
You know what? I am pretty good in a crisis. I find myself usually um, I usually can keep pretty calm and take care of business, handle things. I don't think I'd be that calm in that situation. I think if
Well,
there
I
was
mean, you
literal,
never know. You never know.
yeah, you
I'll
never know. I don't think I'd be able to survive like Sean was able to in the film, but I'd sure try. I'd
let's
be fighting, but I'd be freaking out. I'd be like,
let's
yeah.
break out my copy of the Necronomicon, summon some demons, see what happens.
Yeah, hey, this is podcast. This is about to get really spicy and interesting if we get some deadites running around, you know.
Not every YouTube show features actual interviews with real deadites, so that's
Yeah, exactly. True.
no. But what would so throughout that process, what would you say was the most challenging part of writing the movie and then making the movie?
Well, the writing part's the easiest because for me, from a writer background, basically I'm alone with the page and it's up to me. You know what I mean? When you're shooting an independent film, there's weather, there's, we were in the middle of the COVID pandemic. So there's guidelines we have to follow. There's a number of things, especially with practical effects. You only have so many attempts to get a shot right. So it was like a constant battle. We were doing night shoots pretty much the whole time. We had a few days at the beginning and then pretty much ran nights for like 30 nights in a row. So it was, there's fatigue, there's everything, you can imagine, especially on a low budget film. So definitely the production was tough, but we had a tremendous crew and tremendous cast, and everybody really showed up and delivered. Because I think everybody was passionate about the project, which was as that writer who created these characters, seeing people really show up and care and deliver like they did was very rewarding, and that's what kind of keeps you going through those grueling times, is everybody around you propping each other up.
What would you say was sort of your biggest inspirations, say from the horror genre? Like, what are you a fan?
Well, some of my favorites, from the genre, I'm a huge fan of Tremors, Fright Night, The Lost Boys, From Dusk Till Dawn. I love Scream. I love the Universal horror monsters. When I was a kid, I was fascinated with them. So, the Tales from the Crypt television series I loved. I have such a love of the genre as a whole. But when I think of, what Here for Bloodstone is, it's things like From Dusk Till Dawn, or even Demon Night, or that sort of light humor that Tremors had. I really wanted to
You really like the
put that
90s,
in.
I'm sensing.
Yeah, you know what? I guess I
I'm
do.
hearing a lot of 90s stuff. It was a lot of people say that like horror died in the 90s. No, it didn't.
No, I
There was so much
disagree.
like slashers had kind of a downgrade, but there was so much creativity coming out and like creature features like the ones you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the it is underrated as a decade for sure, in my opinion, for horror. Like even Idle Hands. I love Idle Hands with Devon Sawa. Like I know that movie, it didn't do well. The reviews weren't great, but like to me, that's like a classic. Like I absolutely adore that movie, and I think it was to the age I was. You know what I mean? I was growing up in the '90s, and that's when you're going to the video stores and discovering a lot of these movies with your friends, you know what I mean? And doing marathons, you know, of all that good stuff that was coming out around that time.
Mm-hmm. So, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Is there any talks or plans or ideas for a sequel to this movie?
Yeah, I definitely have ideas for a sequel. Have some stuff written, kind of a bit of a blueprint for a sequel. In terms of plans for it, that really would depend on if there's a demand, if anybody would like to see it. So, you know, hopefully when it comes out,
I'm demanding it.
oh, perfect. Let everybody know,
I
because
speak for the world.
yeah, well, you know, the sequel would be at Tom and Phoebe's wedding, and their wedding gets besieged by the cult looking for revenge. Except for the entire groom's side are all professional wrestlers. So it's like
That would be amazing.
yeah, it's like pure chaos battle royale at this wedding, and everybody's dressed to the nines, and there's just blood flying everywhere, and pro wrestlers throwing guys, and it would be super chaotic and fun.
Just wedding dresses getting covered in blood, like Samara
Yeah,
Weaving in Ready or Not.
yeah, exactly. And I think you'd have that fun juxtaposition of Phoebe's side of the family, you know, her whole side being totally just unprepared and shocked, and then you know all of Tom and his groomsmen and his all the wrestlers in attendance would just be, you know, full almost like a Royal Rumble, you know, battle royale, just insane fun violent film. So that's kind of what I was thinking. So we'll see. I would love to get into it and kind of dive into that world, but yeah, I'm putting it out there. That's why I told you a little bit about what I was thinking. So let's put it out there and hopefully it manifests.
Let's put it out there, and you know, I'll be very disappointed if I don't see that in a couple years. Because that sounds amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you.
What was the most fun scene to shoot and why?
Most fun. You know, it was for me just being a lifelong horror fan. It was always when we were doing practical effects.
Mm-hmm.
Always when we were, you know, we had things rigged up and they had the blood hoses going in and the team's on standby and everybody's standing there, you know, covered in their trash bags and things to keep the blood off you. And that was always the most fun for me because that's really like what gets me excited about, you know, and kind of fulfills that childhood dream of working on films like this and getting to see that. So for me, it was always the practical effects scenes were the most fun.
I love all horror. I love a good horror movie that is out to like disturb me. And I think there's a time and a place for a horror movie to take itself very, very seriously.
Mhm.
And I think there's a time and a place for a horror movie to just want to have fun and just like go all out, balls to the wall. And I really think Here for Blood just does that. It's my favorite. I know we're still early in the year. And when I say it's my favorite, you know, Screambox movie of the year, I'm betting on it staying that way.
Well,
Time will
thank you.
tell. I know that like it's, you know, I know how it sounds me saying that now. It's only February, but you know, it's setting the bar very high.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. That's very kind of you.
All right. So before I do have to wrap up, before I do, can you tell my viewers, is there anything that you're working on right now that you can talk about, and where can they find you, like, you know, social media or on the internet?
Well, right now my priority is you know Here for Blood, making sure it you know we try to connect it to the audience, you know, and keep growing. We still want to get it more places and get it seen. But if you'd like to follow the film, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Here for Blood. You can follow myself at James Roberts 519 on Twitter. I'm brand new. I don't tweet, but I'm doing it now for the just to get in on the conversation regarding the film. So you can find
Taking
me
one
there.
for the team.
Taking one for the team. I'm dipping my toe into X or whatever it's called now. So
I have a love-hate relationship with Twitter.
yeah.
I've used it for a great way to connect with people. I love it for that. Definitely has a lot of issues though. It is what you make of it, is
Yeah,
all
for
I'll
sure.
say.
Yeah. Perfect.
I also want to. I'm going to let everybody know. I'm personally going to, because I want people to see this movie. Check it out on Screenbox. I want to get this movie made into a kill count on Dead Meat. You know Dead Meat?
Yeah, of course.
So
I love
I'm
Dead Meat.
I'm gonna email. They have a Gmail account. I'm gonna put it up on the screen, and I want everybody email that account and tell James A. Janice that we want to see a kill count of Here for Blood.
Yes, that'd be a dream come true. That'd be so good. I'd love that.
All right. Well, on that note, once again, thanks so much for joining us. Love the movie. Hope everyone checks it out. If you haven't, what are you waiting for? Go watch it right now. And this has been great. We'll wait for that sequel.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. This has been a lot of fun. I can't wait to come back.
Thanks again, James, for joining us. I certainly had a lot of fun talking to you. Can't wait to see where your next project is. Guys, be sure to follow James on all of his socials. And as I said before, check out this movie if you haven't. It's a lot of fun. Let me know in the comments what you thought of it. Like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you don't, you may end up stuck in a house being attacked by a cult of masked killers who are trying to do some weird, satanic, demonic ritual. And as always, every day is Halloween.